Well, thank you, everybody. And it's nice to be in Orlando, Florida, the home of now Major League Soccer and Major League Baseball. And because we have plenty of physical distancing here at the Orlando Convention Center, I'm going to take my mask off. But I can tell you for the last, 6 or 7 hours, we've had the opportunity to mingle with hundreds of ladies and gentlemen in the Central Florida hospitality and meetings and exhibitions business. And I can tell you that the physical distancing has been outstanding. The good width in aisles, the sanitation stations throughout the Orange County Convention Center have been outstanding. And I can tell you that it's been my pleasure to be here. So in the audience and also online, you can do it at home, but I can't see you. How many of you have lived and driven through a snowstorm? You know what? 90% of the people in the audience here live have driven through a snowstorm. So my good friend Kevin's right in front of me. So Kevin, I can see you, so I'll probably be kind of pointing you out a little bit as we go along here this afternoon. But remember driving through snowstorms. They start out kind of slow, right? You're driving along. You can see the tracks of the car in front of you, so it helps you kind of guide your car or your truck. And then the snow gets heavier and heavier, and it seems like hours that you're driving through this heavy snowstorm. And then, in the horizon, you see some light. You see it lightening up. And then you see some blue sky. I can tell you that this COVID challenge globally, and I don't mean to minimize it at all, but it's kind of like driving through a snowstorm. And by the way, together again, and our friends at Alliance, and our friends at the Visit Orlando Convention and Visitors Association, and our friends at the Orlando Convention Center, thank you for putting this together, because guess what? All of the ladies and gentlemen here in the live exhibit and in the live attendance, and those of you online, we need to work together to launch and move forward together again, and that's what we're going to do. So over the next few minutes, I'm going to share some information with you that I hope will be very helpful. For those of you not as familiar with IAE, we're a trade association. We have members in 52 countries. We have 1,300 plus member organizations representing over 12,000 ladies and gentlemen on those rosters of 1,300 organizations. And I can tell you that our focus is education, is advocacy, and I'm going to focus on that, and certainly global development. Meaning that we have to keep an eye on predominantly the U.S. exhibition and business events industry, which is really represents about 85% of our membership. But this first slide that I'm sharing with you is basically to give you a snapshot of what's happening around the world. Open with government restrictions as of early July. Those are the countries that are doing well. Obviously, the COVID virus is reported to have started in China, right? But think about it. If it reported in China and people were flying into the United States, mostly they're coming through the West Coast, and Los Angeles was a hot spot. Obviously, it is again, unfortunately. And if they went the other way from China and Asia, they went through Europe. And what happened? As they went through Europe, they started coming into New Jersey, Washington, D.C., and LaGuardia. So who were the first hotspots in the United States? New York City predominantly, and certainly, and even Kevin, in the city you live in, Chicago, there were international flights from Asia that came into Chicago. I live in Dallas. So think about where this came. But I tell you what, the countries on the first line, the countries that are open with pretty aggressive trade show activity and business events activities are Australia, China, Hong Kong, New Zealand, et cetera. Now, all of them are experiencing spikes, of course, but for the most part, they've stayed open. In the United States, as we all know, and I'm going to be very apolitical up here because in my own state of Texas, I live in Dallas. We have a Republican governor, and he's doing an outstanding job, Governor Abbott. We have a wonderful mayor, Johnson, in Dallas. He's doing a wonderful job, but they don't always think alike on what they want to do in terms of masks. But at least in Texas, and certainly everywhere around the country, and most, probably 90%, 85–90% of the states now have a mandated mask requirement. So the United States is very different. We're partially open. Certainly here in Orlando, they've been more aggressive, and they had 12,000 volleyball participants for 6 or 8 days last week. They just left, huh? Congratulations for those of you who service those wonderful coaches and parents and ladies and gentlemen competing. And of course, right after that, an even better event is Together Again. So that's why we're here. So it really depends on where you live, what city you live in. And as I said, I live in Plano, which is north of Dallas, but Dallas is where our office is. You know, we have looser restrictions, but we have mandated masks. And you know what? We're starting, like here in Florida and Arizona this week, to start to tap down and flatten the curve. How about in the Middle East? The only country in the Middle East, actually an emirate, is Dubai. They had a big show last week, about 8,000 ladies and gentlemen. I can't remember what industry it was, but all the other emirates are closed down. Saudi Arabia, which is a neighbor, is closed down, and they're not looking to possibly open until September. And then in Europe, we have a unique situation because our friends in Germany, which is the 3rd largest exhibition industry in the world, United States #1, at least we were in 2019. China #2. China has more square meters and convention gross square feet than we do in the United States, but they have half as many facilities because their exhibition centers like Guangzhou and Shenzhen are just incredibly large, even larger than this building, who's the 2nd largest in the US, and McCormick Place in Chicago being the largest. So what's happened in Europe is Germany, for those of you who might know, the German exhibition market is the 2nd largest in the world. I'm sorry, the 3rd now. And they have what's called messes, M-E-S-S-E, and that's what the German word for convention exhibition centers is. But they're all owned by the cities where they are, whether it's Hamburg, whether it's Berlin, etc. So guess what? The mayors of those cities are usually the chairs of those messes, board of directors. So those, I think 14 or 15 messes, convention centers, got with the German chancellor and got through the government, and they were able to strip out, I say that in a positive way, meetings, conventions, and trade shows from mass gatherings, right? The old infamous statement of mass gatherings. We're trying to do the same thing in the United States, but guess what? We have over 300 exhibition convention centers in the United States. They had 15 in Germany that put political pressure on the chancellor to get that done. So the German exhibition market's been open for over 2 months. We will continue to lobby, and I'll touch on that in a moment. Here are some confirmed cases, just a couple of graphs showing you what happened in New York and New Jersey, and show you over the last several weeks, probably 4 weeks, what's happened in Florida and Arizona. The good news is, as of last night, I didn't watch any news this morning, the COVID cases, number of cases are starting to come down. That's good news. You in Central Florida obviously are in an opportunity where you have less cases and you have great health care as you do in the rest of Florida, but the numbers are not as significant as they are in other parts of your great state. Obviously, this slide is a bit disturbing, showing that in green is the United States, and over the 7-day moving average, and then Europe was yellow, dropped all the way down, as you can see, and blue was Western Europe, dropped all the way down. So once again, stay optimistic. We're in a snowstorm, but we're going to get to the sunshine shortly. The Center for Exhibition Industry Research, which many of you know, is called CEIR. It's based in Dallas. It's a sister organization that my staff and I helped to run. Actually, Kathy Breeden runs it. She's our CEO of CEIR and Executive Vice President of IAEE. And they put out this research. And once again, if anybody wants this PowerPoint presentation, physically, just bring up at the end of the presentation, put PPT, write it on your business card. I'll send it to you on Monday. For those of you virtually, just send an email to the Alliance folks or the OCC folks, and they have this PowerPoint presentation. Be happy to share it, because some of the charts you won't be able to read as well, certainly physically here, as you can virtually. But one of the things that I want to share with you, obviously, there's different models that are happening through the survey research of talking to show organizers and suppliers. Obviously, you have hybrid, which is a physical and virtual combination. You have physical, obviously, which is 100% in person, which is actually more profitable for associations and for-profit organizers to run trade shows and business events. Obviously, that's the preferred method. But today, I can tell you, and showing you a couple slides in a minute, that the probably 95% of what's happened in the last 3 months are virtual and online only. But obviously, there's different models that are going to take place. And moving forward, you're going to see that hybrid is going to accelerate its persistence and its reality, because the opportunity to expand markets. For example, Expo, which is our IE annual meeting every December, we're looking at what we're going to do. We're going to make some decisions in the next several weeks. Obviously, we can have an in-person only, which in Vegas last year, we drew over 2,000. In Louisville this year, I think maybe 50% of that attendance, but still we're going to do a physical show unless we're told otherwise by the governor in Kentucky and the mayor in Louisville. But we're looking at hybrid. How are we going to do that? How do you price it? How do you monetize it? But more importantly, as an association, how do we better serve our members? So we had a conversation with my senior staff yesterday. What if we had 1,000 people in person in Louisville? And by the way, Together Again had almost 1,000 people registered for in-person here. I was told that we have well over 2,000 that registered for the virtual. That's 3,000 people. Obviously 2,000 more than what could be here, and this was free. Thank you very much, Alliance and OCCC, for your and all the sponsors for your support. But my point is, look at different models, and here's a slide talking about the fact that 73% of the show organizers have canceled their show for 2020. 37% have postponed it either from the spring to the fall. So obviously, these type of statistics are important as you get a chance to read them a little bit more in detail. Certainly, what's the impact on the U.S. exhibition industry? 72% actually, it's actually higher now, 75% canceled, but a lot were postponed and are on the books if they could find dates starting early September through mid-December. A lot of them have still postponed again because of this new spike, right? But we're staying optimistic that if 75% of the shows that are still on the books from Labor Day, U.S. Labor Day, to mid-December happen, even if they happen at 50 or 60% of the attendance, would we all take that compared to zero? I would take that compared to zero, right? So let's keep the faith, and let's understand that looking forward, we have to stay positive. This slide is a little hard to read, and I'll just give you some highlights. Every show organizer and every supplier in our industry, and by the way, last year, the SEER research identified that in 2019, it was the best exhibition industry economics in our history until March 1st, when things started to slide. $100 billion industry in the United States, probably as large, if not larger, than the automotive industry in the United States. But guess what? Since that happened, all of us, all of you that are suppliers in the room, all of you that are show organizers in the room and online, what have you done? You've built contingency plans, you've built hybrid opportunities, you've looked at the virtual components. Our friends on the technology side and general service contractors who have technology expertise, that's driving a lot of revenue. So I know, and I won't name names, but I know 5 or 6 companies that had to hire people on the technology side because their virtual business exploded. Now, will they be able to keep those ladies and gentlemen going forward? I think so. I think next year, the best guess that the SEER researchers are and our economist, Alan Shaw, with SEER points out is that we think that next year, if you look at 2021 total, 75% of the shows that were 100% in person will be, 75% will be in person, augmented by 25 to 30% online. Then how do you figure out how you pay for it? So our registration for Expo for a full package, call it $800, we're thinking about something like $295, and I bet you we can get 1,500 people. So these are the kind of thoughts that are going through your customers' minds and you as customers as you're looking at it. Have you taken, I know several shows that have taken their big show and they're doing 4 regionals this fall. Okay, if you add up the 4 regionals where it's safe and they have the capability in the convention center and they're allowed to have the event, maybe you can get to the same revenues. And better yet, for general service contractors and hotels and airlines, we're still getting maybe the same amount of people on an airplane staying in a hotel and enjoying restaurants and using general service contractors and AV companies that make up our ecosystem. This is a hard slide to read, and once again, I'll be happy to send this to you, but we asked exhibitors, at what point will your company be back to exhibiting in live trade shows and events? And towards the bottom, if you can read it, it's first quarter 2021, 91% said they'll be back. But in the fourth quarter, about 60%. And I think that's going to slide a little bit. I hate to be David Downer, but that's going to happen. Okay? So we got to keep the faith that the COVID numbers will continue to drop after we've hit this spike. Some scientists and healthcare professionals are saying to look for another spike in September. Let's fingers crossed, and those who are prayerful, pray that that doesn't happen to the kind of extent that we experienced in the last 6 weeks. What's your association doing? IAE, and by the way, some of you are CISO members, the Society of Independent Show Organizers. Many of you are ESCA members, Exhibit Service Contractors, EDPA, IAVM. Many of you are involved in the very important segment of our ecosystem on the labor side. We thank you for that great support. I know we have a lot of labor and councils represented here, right, Kevin? Wonderful ladies and gentlemen that without them we wouldn't be able to create and manage shows. But I can tell you, as I've mentioned, this is our opportunity. This is not a sales pitch as much as to tell you that we're thinking as an association. What are we going to do? Are we going to do physical only, as I mentioned? Are we going to do a hybrid? Are we going to do virtual only? If we're not, if the governor of Kentucky and the mayor of Louisville turn their convention center in October into a hospital, guess what? We're not going to be able to have Expo. But guess what? We're going to have one heck of a virtual opportunity like you're experiencing for those of you watching online today. So those are the kind of opportunities as an association. My own association, 25 staff. Last year we had an $8 million budget. Next year we'll probably have a $6 million budget. So we have to look at all kinds of different options to best serve our members in our industry. For those of you who are not familiar with the resources available, we developed in labor, general service contractors, hotel companies, airlines, venue management. They were all involved in a task force to develop what you see on the screen, essential considerations for safely reopening exhibitions and events. It's online, IAE.com. Please download it. It's 35 pages. It's great information. And by the way, if you're a supplier, as a consultant to your customer, or you're a customer, a show organizer, for-profit or association, please take a look at it. Our friends at CISO have also put out their guidance. It's very outstanding. CISO was part of developing ours, so there's a lot of collaboration there. And so obviously all kinds of resources available at the IAE website. I'm going to spend the next couple minutes trying to keep your attention and keep you interested in the next couple of weeks. About 8 years ago, we started Exhibitions Mean Business, which is an advocacy program managed by IAEE with 25 supporting organizations, like the usuals, invaluable partners like IAVM, EDPA, ESCA, our labor partners, PCMA, MPI, ASAE, the American Society of Association Execs. So we've developed an ambassador program, and obviously we were into storytelling. But every June we did Exhibitions Day, and historically we've had 125 people on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., and guess what we were doing? We were making calls. We were advocating for, we were talking about the value of the employment that we generate as an exhibition and business events industry. And we were effective. We were getting co-sponsors for different legislation over the last years. This year we had to do it online. Normally we had 125 people in person. We had 650 people online. Every single one of them signed a pledge form saying that they will help to advocate and lobby for various legislation that I'm about to tell you about. We had 1,600 actually registered to go virtually, but only about 650 show up. So what's that? It's about 45%. So that's what's happening with virtual. And by the way, it was free, so it made it easy not to show up on that particular day, June 3rd. These are some pictures of meeting with, last year, of meeting with some of the ladies and gentlemen in Congress and their staff. And once again, we had positive effect. Next year, I think it'll be June 4th. It'll be in person. I want 500 of us there. Kevin, I know you'll be there. 500 ladies and gentlemen making calls on Capitol Hill. Now, that's a big scheduling challenge, but my staff and I will take that on. Because guess what? We've had a wake-up call that we have not had. Even though we've had exhibitions mean business for 8 years, we've not had an aggressive enough, deep enough penetration to educate the legislators about how important our industry is. So hopefully next year, first week in June, we'll have more of you there in person. 2 months ago, my counterpart at CISO, Society of Independent Show Organizers, gave me a call. Bob Priestek, the CEO of Freeman, gave me a call and said, IE's got to be part of working with these different organizations to launch Go Live Together, which I'll tell you about more in a minute. But because of the American Society of Association Executive working on legislation for 501c6, a lot of you don't know what that is. It's an IRS code. And the first PPP program, 501c3 organizations, which are typically foundations and charity organizations, were eligible for PPP. How many of you applied for and got some level of PPP? You know, probably 10, 15% of you, okay? Associations who are C6s like IAE and CISO and others were not able to access that money. But the American Society of Association Executives have aggressively lobbied and continue to lobby, I'll tell you more about that in a second, for getting C6s. Most of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, it's about 90% of you out there are Convention and Visitors Bureaus are C6 organizations that need some financial relief. And any other organizations, I mentioned SEER, U.S. Travel Association's been our lead advocate with six or seven lobbyists. Roger Dow and Tori Barnes have been outstanding in helping us move forward. Certainly the Events Industry Council, which is 33 organizations made up of MPI and PCMA and IEE and HSMAI and IAVM, and I joke with my kids and MOUSE, right? We got all the acronyms in our industry. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to tell you about Go Live Together. Please write this down or take a picture of this. GoLiveTogether.com. Costs nothing to access. We have general service contractors supporting, and I'll show you a slide that captures about 75% of the organizations that are sponsoring and helping with this group. They're raison d'etre, and there's 5 of us that sit on their executive committee. IE and SEER put in $100,000. Our friends at CISO put in $150,000. And then we raised another $250,000 to hire Brownstein Farber, et cetera, a large lobbying firm based in Washington, D.C. that I'll tell you more about in a second. What was their reason to exist? And by the way, when Go Live started in April, I'm assuming that our friends at Alliance said, wow. And I know that Mark Yuska probably said to himself, he told me about it this morning, it took him a couple weeks to kind of get this idea together. And look what he's done, and look what they've done as the Alliance company to pull this together with OCCC and the Visit Orlando Convention Bureau. Outstanding. But Go Live Together is taking it beyond the good work that's being done today. And by the way, I know all of you are on social media, posting pictures, interacting with your friends that are following you on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, because I bet you when Mark and Mike, the triumvirate, gets their media people to look how many impressions were made by Together Again, that's going to be outstanding. So we had, led by our friends at Freeman, we now have 2,500 organizations that are members of Go Live Together, including many general service contractors, many labor groups, many hotel companies, airlines, and GBAC. If you were listening to Patty Ollinger in a couple sessions this morning that United had right before this one, United Services, and the panel this morning, you would have learned about global biorisk. This is a GBAC star accredited building. I think the second in the United States to get that accreditation, kind of like LEED certification. But these are the 4 pillars that are focused on by the Go Live Together. Here are about 75, 80% of the ladies and gentlemen, the logos, the organizations that are supporting this entity. By the way, this entity will take us through this. It may be 6 more months. It's not meant to be another association. It's not meant to replace CISO or IAE or IAVM. We were able, I tell you, I couldn't have raised $500,000 under Exhibitions Mean Business the way we did as a collective. So this has really been a wonderful and continues to be a wonderful industry collaboration. When you go on the website, you'll see a lot of different pictures and data points. This is probably the best slide that talks about 6.6 million jobs represented by the live industry. This is just in the United States. And by the way, Brownstein, our lobbying firm, has been making personal calls and phone calls on the legislative connections that they have on Capitol Hill, and this is the #1 handout that they give. So if you need this, take this. By the way, it's on the website. Go and register. It doesn't cost anything to do that. I'm going to try to be very political here. I'm an independent, so I can kind of look to the left, I can kind of look to the right from time to time. But I tell you what, we got to look right down the middle right now. What are we working on? Congress came back in, Senate came back in Monday of this week. 6 weeks ago, the House approved the HEROES Act. You all have read about it, saw it on television, your social media, wherever you get your news. The HEROES Act was passed by the House, sent to the Senate. The Senate decided to wait until they got back in session the middle of July. And once again, I'm not going to get into the politics of why that happened. But the good news is that the Senate, early next week, according to Mitch McConnell, Majority Leader for the Senate, Republican, made a statement that I watched this morning and last night, that they will have something out next week. They're still negotiating with the Trump administration. Once that gets done, the Senate will vote on it, let's say Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday of next week. Then it will go to the House. Guess what's going to happen then? More negotiations, more great conversations. Love to be on a fly on the wall in those rooms when the leaders of the House and the leaders of the Senate are politely going at each other in the negotiations. Bottom line is, let's hope that at least $1.5 trillion of economic stimulus comes out of their conversations. And that's what we're fighting for. So obviously, as you can see on this slide, the legislation priorities, for the sake of time, because time's up, I'm not going to go through them, but you can see the most important two are tax credits for businesses in the exhibition and business events industry, both supplier side and planner organizer side, to have tax credits for 2020 and 2021 because of all the financial damage we've all incurred. Secondly, and not any more important, is an extension of PPP. As I mentioned, to get 501c6 organizations included in PPP, which are 75% of the association shows, are C6 organizations. And if they didn't have the show, what happened? They lost a lot of revenue and they've laid people off. Destination marketing organizations, 90% are C6s. They need financial assistance. By the way, so does the attraction business. You think the airlines out there lobbying? You think the restaurants aren't lobbying, the hotel companies? We're all lobbying. There are 700, right, Chris? I see you now. There are 700 plus bills that were drafted in the last 3 months that have the word COVID on it. So everybody, manufacturers, farmers, everybody wants a piece of hopefully this $1.3, $1.5 trillion stimulus package that hopefully will be approved in the next 2 weeks. What can you do? As I finish my thoughts, do your homework on the issues in Congress. Go live together. Go to Exhibitions Mean Business. Both of us, by the way, we replicate each other because we have extended audiences between Go Live Together and the IAE, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and our own website. We have, and the Events Industry Council, who had a webinar yesterday for their 100,000 members that make up those 33 organizations. Get to understand the issues. Go to these websites, Exhibitions Mean Business or Go Live Together. Refer to the issues on these pages. And more importantly, you will get, by the way, if you're an IE member, it went out to you today. I know ESCA sent it out. Chris, I don't know if EDPA sent it out. They probably did today. Dasher probably did. Kevin and the labor unions as part of the Greater Chicago Council you're involved in, and all your friends across labor. When you get a call to action in your inbox, take 3 minutes. I did it last night. 3 minutes. I clicked. There was a sample letter. I sent it to my 2 senators and Marchant, my representative where I live. It took me 3 minutes. And what did it say? Support the business events and exhibition industry, please. By the way, and it's linked to different websites. So if you get that, I'll stop there because I feel like a preacher, but I am today. You get a call to action, please do something with it. Don't just say, oh, somebody else is going to do that. Right, Chris? Get it done. Because a couple years ago, and I'm looking at my friend Chris, who's the advocacy gentleman, committee chair for EDPA, the Designer and Producers Association, you started bringing 20, 30 people every year because you got it. So this is what we need to do. That's democracy, that's governance. So ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time. I thank you to the virtual audience somewhere out there. I'll stand around for questions if you have any. Please have a safe trip home and keep the faith. The snowstorm will end. The blue sky is ahead. Keep the faith and keep going. Together again, we've made a great difference today. Thank you very much.